Hello and howdy, and welcome to my first web app. I'm so excited that you want to know more about creating web apps and coding in general. So really hope that this tutorial will help you get started and hopefully get more interested in programming. So my name is Alyssa Nicoll. You can DM me on Twitter if you have any questions at all whenever you're watching this. So yes, at Alyssa Nicoll on Twitter. Check it out if you want to chat or have questions or want to show me your final product. So I definitely want to see. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. So yes, this is a primer for those interested in building web applications. I'm going to introduce HTML and CSS, and we'll also touch on animating a little bit near the end with those two. We'll be using codepen.io in the browser of your choice. So you can go ahead and head on over to codepen.io and create an account so that when we are ready, we can get started. Here's some resources. I want to go ahead and list these out. Go ahead and pause the video and screenshot this, or maybe they're available in the description of the video. Which would be handy for clicking. But there is the starter app link on codepen.io, and I'll share the end result at the very end of the video, which will be my end result. Yours, of course, will look different. And then I have a couple of resources. There's this one about the boilerplate HTML. This is going to go into talking about things that we won't dive into in this video. We just don't have time. But if you're interested in programming and coding outside of CodePen, definitely an interesting article to read about and get started. And then there's two cheat sheets that I linked to. And I'm actually going to pull them up right now. This first one has a really... It's not the most beautiful UI, but it is very informative. There's lots of examples as you scroll through on how to build out different types of things in HTML. So for example, this list, you can say, go ahead and generate the list. It's going to show you the HTML down here, and I'm going to make it a bit bigger if I can. There we go. I'm just like zooming way in for you. So it's going to show you the example HTML for an unordered list, the thing that you clicked on. You could add styles if you wanted, and then it's going to show you a little preview for what you're going to see in the browser whenever you use this type of markup. So really cool resource cheat sheet. And then the second one is actually, let me pull this one up. This HTML cheat sheet from Digital Tools or digital.com under their tools. And you can scroll through and click on like button, and it should take you down to the actual documentation about that item that you clicked on. I think you have to scroll up a little bit. Yeah. And so there we are on the button tag, and then it's going to kind of teach you more about what's possible in HTML. So I just wanted to give you these resources up front because we're going to cover a lot of things, but not everything. So, and then also color and font resources that I will be referencing later on. So there for the screenshotting if you want to pull them up later. But let's get started. We're going to go ahead and open up this starter app link at codepen.io. And if you haven't already, please make an account and sign in, and make sure I've got my little avatar over here. Click on your avatar, make sure that you're actually signed in, and then either click on the link or route to codepen.io/Alyssa Michelle, which is my username, /pen. And then this is the code that you will want. And I will make it very large for you. DYWMYGQ. And the caps do matter, unfortunately. But once you've got that pulled up, you will see this gorgeous view. And we will be ready to get started. You can change the view on CodePen so that you can move the code around to the top or to the side. I personally always like this view with my code on the left and my preview on the right, but that's just me. So if you've got this pulled up and you're signed in, at the very bottom, you will see a fork button option, and you're going to want to click that fork. And I'm just going to go ahead and click it with you. And then it is going to change the page a bit, and let's click on this little animating pencil icon. And let's change the title. So I'm going to change mine to working, so that I know this is my working copy, but you can change it to whatever you want and save. And now you are ready to go and ready to get started making your very first website. So let's jump in. Tabs. We'll leave that one open just in case we need to use the resources. Okay, so let's talk about HTML and CSS. This is for JavaScript, which we won't be needing today. So we can go ahead and collapse that panel there. And this is where we're going to be doing our CSS. We can collapse that for now. We're going to just talk about HTML. So HTML is a markup language. I think it was first created in like 1991, forever ago, basically. And all websites use HTML and CSS to display the view. HTML is the building blocks. These are the pieces that make up a website. So let's go to a random website. Actually, let's go to Color Hunt, because I'm going to use this website later on to inspire you with colors, because I want you to make this website your very own. I want you to put your first name, your last name, your information, pictures of you, everything and anything that you want. I want this website to be about you. So you need to, of course, pick out your own colors. But I'm going to use this Color Hunt website as an example. So all things that you see on the web, like these buttons, these little navigation items, or these little cards that have colors on them, they're all HTML elements under the scene. Even this search right here, that's an HTML element. And so if we go ahead and we open up our inspector, you don't need to do this at all. I just wanted to show you that behind the scenes, everything really is HTML and CSS. So here we have our HTML tag that wraps all of your HTML. You have your head and your body with script tags. And then we keep scrolling, you'll see the input, which is this search input that I had highlighted for you. And if we use our little selector over here, we can select these anchors, which are nav items. And then same thing with these color cards or their color palettes. You can see here that we've got different elements, divs with classes and IDs, and anchors with hrefs and all these good sorts of things. And then down here are the styles that apply to them. So it can look a bit daunting and scary. So we're going to actually scale back from there, close that, and just talk about what we've got going on so far. So I've already created this H1, and inside of it has two spans, a first name and a last name. Those really aren't needed just yet. They're a little bit fancy. So let's go ahead and create an H2. And I typed out H2 and tab, and I'm actually going to turn on my keycaster. Keycaster. I need my keycaster. Okay. So that you can see what keys I'm typing, and I'm going to let it display at the bottom of the screen like that. So I typed H2 and then tab, and it kind of auto-completed. This is CodePen's way of being friendly and easy to use. You could also type out, if you were feeling it, the brackets. And so this is an opening tag, and this is a closing tag. Most elements in HTML have an opening and closing tag. So like this paragraph, for instance, it has an opening P and a closing P. So let's go ahead and make another paragraph. And actually we have two H2s up here. Let's go ahead and just create one that says, hello, this is my about page. Yours can say whatever you would like. So in the world of HTML, there are header tags. This is an H1, this is an H2. It keeps going, H3. Actually, I don't know why that didn't autocomplete for me. There it goes. H3, hi, time an even smaller header. And if we actually go and we comment out the 3 styles that I've added, you'll see what it looks like from scratch. So it's pretty boring, pretty like default, you might say. We've got a big header, a smaller header, an even smaller header, and then a paragraph. And so I want another paragraph, please. Okay. So here you can see that it's went ahead and separated the 2 paragraphs, and the browser's already styled each of these headers differently. Pretty basic, pretty easy peasy. The next thing I would like to get into, though, is styling these things. So if we go ahead and pull up our CSS, the body is the tag that wraps everything. So because of CodePen, as I mentioned earlier, CodePen's hiding some of this default goodness. What I mean by that is there is an HTML tag with a head and with a body, and in that body is all of the stuff that we're creating. And so we could do this, boop, boop, boop. And my keycaster is getting a little bit obnoxious. I'm going to scooch him down here. So technically, all of this stuff that we're creating, it resides inside of an HTML tag and inside of a body tag like this. And so here I've just decided to style everything inside the body. I gave it a font family of sans serif. We could take this off and actually we could change it to serif, and you could see our font would change and have little serifs on it. I'm giving a background color of deep sky blue. I think it's a really nice calming blue, but this is where I want you to go ahead and pick out a color of your own. And then I'm giving the text a color white. So if we comment out both of these, the background will go back to white and the text will go back to black as the default. And commenting out is a way in code to write comments, leave notes for yourself, explain things to other developers, or it's a way to comment out maybe old code that you're refactoring or that you're adding to. And so with CSS, if you want to comment something out, you can put a / in front of it, or you can use the key shortcut of Command /, which you'll see my keycaster doing often when I'm commenting things out. And it's the same in HTML. Command / will add in the comment on the line you're selecting, and you'll notice that the comment looks a little bit different in HTML. So yes, that's just a bit of background on commenting and such. You'll see me use those later on in the tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with sans serif because they are my jam. And so as a default, I want the font to be a sans serif, but I really want you to select a background color and a text color that makes you happy. Some of the color resources that we'll get into right now. I've got this #color.com. So this is fun because it's got the color picker that you can kind of select and choose, and it will give you the hex color. It also gives you RGB, HSL, a whole bunch of others that we will not use on the web. So the most common, if we go back to our website here, when you're typing out, and I say color, you can say white or black or green. There's a bunch of web safe colors. You'll see green happened here. There's a bunch of web safe color keywords that you can just use out of the box. But mostly you'll see this format of color, and that's called hex. So I copied this hex, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to type color yet again, and this color is for the font, and you'll see that green color pop into action. I'm going to change it to white background again, the default, so that you can see that green. So something I wanted to talk to you all about is the C in CSS. So let me make my font a little bit larger. Maybe that'll be a bit friendlier. And I'm going to delete this HTML head and body. It is still there in the website. CodePen's just providing it for us. So just to clean up the clutter and have as few errors as possible, I think one of the biggest things, the most common issues that new learners have is they get lost in the tree. They will forget that they need a closing tag, and so they might have a missing closing tag. They'll have things tabbed at really weird junctures that don't make a lot of sense, and they'll have random spacing. And so it makes it really hard to see, oh, wow, I'm missing a paragraph tag, or hey, maybe I'm missing like this. I see this all the time. If your color breaks, like see how up here, the span has blue, the span has blue, the H1 has blue, but all of a sudden my H3 is red, my P is red, my P is red. My color has broken. That's because you're missing part of the syntax that makes up a tag. So these are really, really, really common mistakes. So my biggest suggestion to you as you get into HTML, as you get into CSS, is to be really conscious of your white space and your tabs. Keep things as clean as possible because it's really, really easy to get lost and to not be able to see, oh, hey, I'm missing a closing tag, or, oh, hey, my H2 is broken because it doesn't have its little closing bracket there. So yes, as we move forward, just if you are running into an error and you're like, I added this paragraph, but I'm not seeing it, or I added this style, but I'm not seeing it. I would suggest up here, there's a little arrow, you drop down, you can say format HTML. And what that does, it actually didn't look like it did anything. So what I'm going to do is make a whole bunch of messes, mess. And then you're like, what just happened? So I can click this and say format HTML. And it's going to go ahead and clean up your code. And what this will do, like let's say we're missing our H2 here, and let's say this is broken. And then we've also got some wonky tabbing. If I say format my HTML, and it cleans up part of it, but the rest of it kind of does something weird too, that's going to be a big clue to you of, hey, I'm missing something somewhere down here, right? And as well as the color code being off. So hopefully this helps you. And boop, missing an H2 there. And don't forget about that format HTML. I think there's also an analyze. I haven't tried that. You might give it a go. But back to the CSS. So I want to talk about the C in CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And so what that means is CSS is meant to layer on itself to get more specific. So right now my body has, I'm just going to go back and turn on our default colors here. My body has a background of blue. My color for my font is white. Now, if I go and I select P tags, all P tags, and I shouldn't have made that capital, for our paragraphs down here, I'm going to give my paragraph, let's go back over to the color Hexia and grab that green color. I'm going to give all paragraphs this lovely green color. So now you'll see that everything inside of our body has a color of white. White, except for our P tags. And that's because the P is a little bit more specific. We can go even further. My bio has a class here on that paragraph. This is a way of identifying elements in CSS with classes or IDs. This could also be an ID. But we'll get into the differences in those in a second. But the class of bio is another way of selecting the paragraph that's a little bit more specific. So if we go down here and we say dot of bio, so the dot is how you say class, and I'm actually going to put this in a comment here for you. Class is dot, and then ID is the hashtag. So I'm going to call out bio, and I'm going to give it a different, yet again, a different color. So let's go and grab, let's grab this yellow. Choose that yellow and go back over here and say color of yellow. So if you'll notice now, only the paragraph that has the class of bio has that yellow color. Beautiful. And remember, CSS can take multiple forms of like units. So we used this hex color here, but we can also use the keyword of yellow. It's a different yellow, but you can use keywords. So try those out. Try out hashtagcolor.com. And then I also have 2 others if you are looking for color inspo as you pick your background color and as you pick your font color. This first one I'm going to show you is called Hail Pixel. It's at color.hailpixel.com. It's a very, very cool website, especially when you are browsing for colors, you're not inspired. You move your mouse around and it's showing you this rainbow of colors that's displayed in the middle as a hex. Once you find a color that you're into, like this dark green, you click on the screen and it saves that swatch off to the side for you. So this can be a really fun way of identifying colors and coming up with a color scheme for your website. And then you can just go ahead and select the color like this purple that we like, go back to our website and plop it in. And you'll see that your bio turns to that lavender color. Keep in mind that obviously lavender on blue is not a great contrast, so it's difficult to read. So definitely I would suggest picking your background color for your body first, and then styling your paragraphs or your H2s, your H3s, all of those things, styling their colors separately and making sure that they're visible. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up my CSS a little bit here. Boop, 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 boop. But I'm going to save that. And then the other one that I wanted to show off is actually boop, 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 called Color Hunt. And this is the one that we saw earlier. I love Color Hunt because it gives you palettes of colors that are like already prepared together. So it's letting you know that this yellow, this green, this blue, and this purple, they all go together really well. So you might choose this purple for your background and this yellow for your text. And you know that they'll look good together and they'll be like super visible, great contrast, etc. So check out colorhunt.co if you are in need of colors, or Hail Pixel, or hashtag color. Those are my 3 color inspiration websites for you. All right, let's go ahead and get to work on this website. So I'm going to fill out this information for myself, but please customize it for yourself however you would like. So I don't want these extra H2s and 3s, and I really just want one paragraph of my bio, which I have in my 1Password. I actually, because I speak a lot, I have this stuff on hand, and I actually have multiple versions of my bio. So here is my bio, and there is my first and last name, and save. And this is the markup that I'm going to work with for the first little bit of our tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead, show it to you one more time, just my H1 with 2 spans separating my first and last name. And this just gives me the ability to select that first name and to select that last name separately. Right now, there is obviously no difference visually with doing this and just having it all in an H1. right? I'm just doing this so that we are set up for some fanciness in the future. So let's go ahead and pull up our styles. Okay. The first thing I want to do, sans serif's nice and good and fine, but I really would like a little bit of specialness on my name. So the last resource on here is fonts.google.com that I'm going to pull up. And this, obviously, Google Fonts offers a lot of different free fonts that you can use on your websites. So I would suggest that you browse the fonts on here and you pick out one that you like. And so let's just pick, I think the one that I really like is called Luckiest Guy. You can type in like your sample text here so that you can see it in the different fonts, which I think is just beautiful. And then we can also search. So I'm going to search for Luckiest. There it is. I love this one. I think it's such a fun font. It shows you all the glyphs that are in the font. But this next part is the important part. So once you have selected a font to your liking, there is going to be an option of select this style over here on the right. And I'm going to bump up the font size of our page so that you can see it better. So make sure that you select the font. You say select this style, and it'll pop out this little selected family side module bud here. This is where the magic happens. So here it'll show review of the fonts you've selected. We just have the one, Luckiest Guy, at a regular 400 weight. And instead of the link, we want the @import statement. So we're going to select what's between the style tags, that @import, and copy it. Go back over to our website, and at the top of the body, we are going to paste that @import statement that's including the Luckiest Guy font from Google. But if you'll notice, we don't actually see the fancy font anywhere, and that's because we haven't assigned it to anything. So let's go ahead and select something to assign it to. So I want my H1, my name, to have the font family of Luckiest Guy. Luckiest Guy. Boom. You'll see it pop in there. And so make sure that when you're assigning font family that you put it between quotes. It's called a string. But we can also do so many other fun things like text align. Right now it's aligning the text to the left side of the page, but we can also tell it to align to the right or the center, which I'm going to go ahead and do. And we can also give a font size. So we can say, I want this to be absolutely massive, 130 pixels, please. Yeah, there's lots of things you can do to the text. I think this looks pretty good. So we're going to move right on into more adjustments that we can do to this text, like text shadow. Hey. But a quick recap, select the font that you want from Google Fonts. So whatever font it is, scroll, searchy search, find it, choose it, and then make sure that you say select this style and go to your font families that have been selected, and make sure you grab the @import statement here between the style tags. That's what you need to copy, and then you should be able to feel free to use whatever that font family name is, Roboto Condensed, Luckiest Guy, and plop it right in there to your font family, and you should see it looking beautiful. So go ahead and customize your name and your font size, text align however you'd like. But let's move on to text shadow. So I have this really spiffy, fun text shadow that I like to use on this particular font. I think it looks cartoony and edgy, and really, really fun. But I'm going to make this super small so that we can see this text shadow line in all of its glory, because it can be a bit daunting. So if we go ahead, and I'm going to go and I'm just going to make each of these go to their own line so that we can see a little bit clearer. more clearly so that we can more clearly see the gorgeousness. But I don't want you to panic, and I don't want you to stress out. And I definitely don't want you to write this out by hand unless you're just in love with this exact text shadow. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. Okay. So now you can see the text shadow with all of its individual lines. And I want to break this down for you. So anytime you see something in CSS or HTML that you're not sure of what the heck is going on, right? There's a lot of numbers and really just ridiculousness. So if we Google text shadow CSS, which you can see I've already Googled it many, many times, this first link here is going to take us to W3 Schools, which is they cover pretty much everything that you could want to know. So about CSS, about HTML, even they go into these other languages that you see up top. So if we scroll down, you'll see that their H1 also has a text shadow, but theirs is much simpler. Let's go ahead and try theirs on ours. So remember how CSS is cascading? Well, because I put this text shadow after this text shadow, it's going to overwrite it. And we could keep doing this all day long. The last thing on the page is going to override everything else. The last thing is going to be the most specific thing. So here you'll see that this is the text shadow they're using to teach. And it has this FF0000 color, which is a red color. It's totally fine too. It's a great text shadow. If we go back over and keep scrolling, you should find something that says CSS syntax. And this is where the money's at, because it's going to explain to you what each part of this is. I think this is okay. This is an okay way to learn. But if we go back and we scroll down a little bit longer, you'll see CSS Tricks also has a text shadow article. CSS Tricks is my all-time favorite website ever, period. And it's a wonderful, wonderful learning resource. So if we scroll down, we'll see that they also have a text shadow here. Let's go ahead and grab their text shadow that they're using to teach. And let's put it after, you guessed it, both of the text shadows we already have. I just did something super silly. That's not the syntax. Oh, I forgot. I copied it. We should just be able to paste. Boom. And there is their lovely blue and black text shadow. 000 is black. So if I replace this, the text shadow should look exactly the same. So their text shadow is showing that you can use hexes, you can use the blue keyword, and they're using all pixels. My text shadow has a mix of units. I have pixels, I have ems, I have just plain 0. But both of these are showing that you can, in fact, mix and match the units. The first value here, this 1 pixel, is the x coordinate. The second value is the y coordinate. The third is the blur radius. And of course, the last one is the color of the shadow. Now, that all might be super over your head, and you might have zero interest in writing a text shadow from scratch, which is not a problem. It's not a requirement at all. If we keep scrolling on this CSS Tricks article, you'll see a list of wonderful examples of all of these are done with text shadows, with CSS. It's really, really cool stuff. So if you like one of these, go ahead and click on the CSS tab of this code pen, and you should be able to go in, find, like, let's say we really liked the Vampire Diaries text shadow. So we should be able to scroll down until we see Vamp, class of Vamp. And this is the gorgeous text shadow that they're using. So you should be able to copy it and go on over to your website and paste it, and then see that gorgeous text shadow on your text. So a lot of times with HTML, or not with HTML, excuse me, with CSS, if you don't want to write something out by scratch, many people have many examples online that you can go ahead and borrow and use in yours and modify it and customize it. So I liked this cartoony look, so that's the one I'm going to stick with. But please don't be afraid when you see something like long and foreboding. It's definitely worth digging into. A quick Google can relieve some of your fears, but CSS Tricks is always a trusted site for teaching you more. Next, I want to go ahead and show you a little bit about why I separated out my H1 into two different spans. So, pardon me. I'm going to make our font a little bit smaller because I want to be able to fit a little bit more on the screen. So I will just scroll up to there so you can see both parts of our H1. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this Format CSS button here. So it cleans up our CSS for us a little bit. Highly recommend doing that at any point throughout this process to your HTML and your CSS just to keep things neat and tidy. It also might highlight some issues you might have. Like if you forget a closing bracket or something, it might be eye-opening whenever it doesn't clean it up in the way you expect it to. But yes, and so we are going to go ahead and select first. If you'll remember, the dot is how we select a class. And of course, the hashtag is for ID, which we can get to later, but right now we just need to select the dot. So we will say dot first, and then let's give it a different color. I want maybe a fun, hot pink color. So I'm going to copy it from over here and paste this hex color, which needs its hashtag, or Hexothorpe, I think is the name of it. And you'll see that now the first name, which has this class of first, is now pink. I could give this class literally anything, like Bob, right? And then I can make sure and select the same thing. As long as they match, it's going to apply whatever styles I choose. So yes. Feel free to use classes anywhere and everywhere that you need to. I think the next step, let's give our paragraph a little bit of styles. And then I think once we have that, we should be able to start making some fun animations maybe next up. So let's go ahead and select our paragraph. And let's give it, I want to talk about margin and spacing a little bit. So we can say, I want my paragraph to be really far away from my text up here. So we can say, I want it to have a margin of 1200 pixels, just like forever away. So now if you'll see our paragraph disappeared, that's because if we scroll, there it is. It has now a huge margin top on it. We can do the same thing with margin bottom. And so that's going to push our page all the way down here. Or we can do, let's say, just 20 pixels, but I want it to be on the right. And so you'll see that the right side of our page changed a little bit. Let's go a little bit bigger so you can see it even more. It's pushing away from that side of the page because our right has 50. Now let's give it to the left. Okay, so you have the option to give top right, bottom left of your margin. But there's also a shortcut. So let's go ahead and say what I really want to do is I would like to center this paragraph on the page. And I don't want it to be like sometimes when our page is this big, I don't want our paragraph to be that skinny. I want it to be a bit chunkier and more centered. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a max width first of all. Max width. And we can say, again, lots of unit options. We could say 200 pixels for my max width. And you'll see that that will center here, or not center, but it will group itself with 200 pixels, or we could say 400 pixels, right? We can also say VW. So I'm going to use 50 VW, and that stands for viewport width. And so or view width. And so here it's taking 50 or half of our view and assigning that to the paragraph. I could also say 100, and that should give it the full view width, except for, of course, this margin that we've already taken up. So I'm going to say 70 view width is as big as I want this paragraph getting. So you'll see as our view gets bigger, our paragraph is also getting bigger. That's because it's trying to assign essentially 70% of it as it's recalculating it as our view changes size, which is nice because if we're on a phone, it's going to change it to be skinnier, and if we're on a desktop, it's going to change it to be wider. But it's also not centering for me. We could say text align center, which we learned about for our paragraph here. But if you'll notice, it's centering the paragraph, so it's center aligned, but it's not centering it on the page as a whole. So that's not exactly what we want. So we're going to say margin top, and we're going to give it 0 because I don't want any additional space on my top. And on my right, I'm going to give it auto. And then I'm going to say margin bottom of 0. And then on my left, I'm going to give it auto as well. So margin 0 auto, this combination of zeros on the top and bottom, autos on the right and left, is a really easy way of centering not only text, but lots of things on a website. Auto is just telling the browser, I want you to calculate what's left over on the left and right. So it's always centering that paragraph. Looks beautiful, right? I'm going to go ahead and give it a background color just so that you can see it a little bit more. This won't be for keeps, but it will be just for demonstration. So now you can see that paragraph, and isn't she gorgeous? And it's growing and shrinking, and it has margin 0 auto on the tops and the right and left and the bottom. A shortcut is you can say margin 0 auto 0 auto, and this is going to do the exact same thing as the long format. So this is talking to margin top, right, bottom, left. And you'll see this shortcut used often. It's the same thing for padding, actually. So padding is another way of spacing things in CSS. And so let's give it 20 pixels of padding. And we'll say 20, 20, 20, and 500. So what's happening is it's giving 20 pixels on the top, right, and bottom. And then the left, as you see, has that 500. So right now I don't need any padding, and I also don't need this background color, so I'm going to comment those out, but I just wanted to use those to show you what's happening. And sometimes when you're debugging and you're trying to figure out why is this style not working, sometimes throwing on a background color can be eye-opening and show you what's really happening behind the scenes. Something else is there is quite a lot of space here between my text and my name and my paragraph. So let's go ahead, and you don't have to follow along at all if this is intimidating, but I often like to use the dev tools in my Chrome browser. So I'm going to right click and click inspect. And that's going to go ahead and open up the HTML and CSS in my Chrome DevTools. So here I'm selecting on my H1, and you'll see this H1 has quite a bit of orange. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Quite a bit of orange on the top and bottom, and that is margin that's being assigned by default. The browser's giving us that margin for free, but it's quite a bit of margin and we don't really need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my H1 that we gave all our family funness and our text shadowness to, and I'm going to say margin 0 and just see what happens. Now you'll see that it is touching the top of the page, and it's also, the paragraph is also at the bottom of it instead of all of that extra space. So I am okay I'm okay with the paragraph's distance from it, but I don't like it touching the top of the page. I still want a little bit of space between my header text and the top of my page. So what we're going to do is just use a little bit of, we'll say, 0 can also be shortcut for boop, boop, boop. They love their shortcuts. But we'll spell it out this time and we'll say top right, bottom left. And we're going to put, I don't know, an easy 100 pixels on the top just to give it some breathing room and some space. Oftentimes, if you're wondering, why doesn't this look good? Why doesn't this feel right? I always say go back to the spacing. Use your margin, use your padding, find out what's not breathing well, because a lot of times just giving the proper amount of spacing between elements and between the page itself can really alleviate issues with some design. So yes, so we are going to go ahead and give that some margin. But now I think we're all ready to add some fun animations and to start working with keyframes maybe and transforms in CSS. I think you're ready for it. Don't be fearful. So we're going to create a super simple keyframe, and I'm going to copy it over, and we're going to go down to the bottom of our CSS, and I'm just going to walk you through what's happening here. So this is a keyframe. There's a couple of different ways to animate in CSS. One of the most common ways is by using a keyframe. And so here we have this bop animation, and it has a from and a to. So this is where it's going to start, the starting state, and this is where it's going to end. So let's go ahead and give Alyssa, so the first name, if we scroll up. So we're going to give the first name an animation. And this animation is going to have multiple pieces. The first is going to be the name, which we named it Bop. The next is the duration. The next one, I'm going to say infinite, which is how long we want this thing to keep going. So I'm going to go ahead and make some notes here for you. And I'll just paste them here so that you can have them for later. So the animation has these pieces, the name, the duration, and how long you want that thing to keep going. But if you'll notice, Alyssa is still not bopping. What is going on? That's because spans are inline elements, and we actually need them to be inline block or block level in order to scale them. So I'm going to say, hey, you be inline block, please, and thank you. And now you'll see it's a poppin', a bippity boppin'. Beautiful. If you'll notice it loops, which is perfect. That's what we want it to do. But it keeps going small to large, pop, small to large, pop. And a quick way of fixing that is to say alternate, which will tell it to go back and forth between the two states. So now it gets smaller and bigger, and then it shrinks back down again before repeating this infinite loop. That's a really fun thing to do. Now, I want to go ahead and do something the same with my last name with a little bit different. So what we're going to do, if you'll scroll down, we can copy our bop keyframe. Copy. And we're going to name, I don't know, this one's going to be a little bit different. So let's boppity. I don't know. Sure. And we're going to still scale it up by 1.1, right? So we're scaling up just a little bit. We could, with our bop animation, scale it up to, I don't know, 3. We can make it massive, right? See how ridiculous that looks? So something to keep in mind with web animations is the subtler, the better. And that you will find that to be true no matter what you're doing. So think subtle thoughts. I'm going to actually leave that comment. Think subtle thoughts. Okay, so back down to boppity. So we could do so much here, right? We don't have to do just scale. We could do the color. We could do where it's at on the page, its size, obviously. What I want to do though is I want to give it a bit of a rotation. So we're going to use boppity, which right now is identical to bop, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to last name. So below first, I'm going to say last. And remember, we have to make it inline block in order to make any kind of scaling possible. And I'm going to do the same thing where I copy this animation line, but I'm going to change it from bop to boppity. So now my last name is doing the same thing as my first name. We could have just said bop on both, would have been totally fine. But I want to have a little bit of a personality, a quirk in boppity. So let's go down to that keyframe. And right next to the scale 1.1, we're going to add a space and say rotate Z. And I'm going to say, I don't know, -3 degrees. Sure. So now it's not only going to go from the size that it originally was, 1, to a 1.1, but it's also going to rotate on its z-axis -3 degrees. We can make that a +3, or we could make it 30 degrees, right? You can spin it as much as you like. Here's it spinning 30 degrees. But again, think subtle thoughts. So as you customize this to be however you want, please have fun with it, but also remember, the more subtle something is, I think the better your end product will look. Okay, so we talked about some animations on the web. We've got this awesomeness happening here. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more to our page. We've got a little bit of time left. So here we are going to just go above everything, enter down a little bit and give us some space. And I'm going to use a div and give it a class of sky. I'm going to call this my sky. And a div is a block level element, whereas a span is an inline level element. So I'm going to use this block level element with a class of sky to go ahead and build out a sky. So let's make another div if you're following along. And I'm going to give that div a class of sun. And it doesn't need anything in between it. It doesn't need, you'll see that printed out here on the screen. You don't need any content in this sunshine. We're just going to build a gorgeous sun in the sky. So now if we go below, let's say, I think we could probably just go below everything at this point. And we're going to say building out our sky. So here I'm going to go ahead and call out our sun. And I need a yellow color, so I'm going to grab, actually, let's just use gold. I think, so we're going to give the sun a background of gold. And you'll notice that we don't see anything at all because there's nothing in sun to make it a certain size. It is 0 pixels by 0 pixels. So let's fix that. Let's give it a width of maybe 50 and a height of 50 as well. So now we should see that gorgeous gold color in our sky, and it's just a square because everything is a square on the web by default until you start messing with its border radius. So we can say border radius of 2 pixels, and that'll give us a barely rounded square. We can say border radius of 20 pixels, and that will give us a very rounded square. Or we can say border radius of 50%, so all the way rounded into a circle. And so we've got a nice little yellow sunshine in the sky. Isn't she gorgeous? She's gorgeous. Next, I'm going to go ahead and borrow an image of a cloud that I found. It's an SVG cloud that I found online, and we're going to go ahead and plop it in our sky. So here we have an image tag, and it has a source, which is pointing to this SVG cloud. It also has an alt. This is the alternative text if the cloud doesn't render, or maybe a screen reader is going to use this alternative text. So I wrote big SVG cloud. I also gave it a class of cloud big. If we copied this source right here, this little SVG source, and we went to it in our browser, you would be able to see nothing because it's white on white. But if I select it, you'll see that there is in fact an SVG path here, which I think I should be able to do maybe color or border, 1 pixel solid. I'm trying to remember what I can do to SVG to make it show up. Fill. It's fill. Oh my goodness. Woof. My mind is like, merp. So you'll see here at this link, there is a cloud. You just can't see it because it's white on white. And so, yes, this is how you bring in an image. And we're actually going to do this 2 more times. Boop, 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 for a cloud medium and a cloud small. All right, so now we have 3 images. One is a big cloud, one's a medium cloud, one's a small cloud, as you can see here. And they have subtle differences between them. They're each different little SVG clouds that are adorable. So you can find any image that you would like. I'm obviously building out a cute little sky here, but feel free to put whatever image tags you want. Make sure though that you have an alternative text that's descriptive for that image in case that image doesn't show, or for screen readers. But let's go ahead and have some fun with these clouds. So I'm going to call out our cloud big, and I'm going, let's see. Before I do that, actually, let's go ahead and call out all images in my sky. So you actually have the ability with selectors to chain them. And so this is saying all images that are inside of the class sky. And we're going to give them a position of absolute. And now I have the ability to go down to cloud big and give it a top, and I'll just say 118 pixels. So position absolute, what that did, I'm going to actually toggle that on and off. And I'm going to hide everything else on my page except for the clouds so that we can focus on the clouds and the sunshine. So position absolute is taking that cloud out of the page flow. So these clouds are all, if I make it so small that they have to stack, they are taking up this amount of space and they're stacking on each other, just like the sun is taking up that amount of space. And so everything has to stack below it. But if you give something like the images in the sky a position absolute, they stack seemingly on top of each other. They're out of the page flow. And so if we actually get rid of this top position, all 3 of our clouds will be boop, boop, boop on top of each other because they are taken up and out of the page flow. This isn't super useful. I mean, I guess it gives us a cool cloud stacking effect. But what it does allow us to do is go ahead and manually manipulate the position of that cloud. So we can say top left, a top of 118 pixels, a left of 280 pixels, and we can even do things like transform it, or where did she go? So our page was so skinny that you couldn't see her. It's okay. She's still there. We moved it over left 280 pixels, so we couldn't see it. Let's go ahead and give cloud medium and cloud small a top and a left as well. So if you would like to manually position something, boop, 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 keep in mind that you need to tell that something to be position absolute. Now, of course, I could have given, let's do the same thing for small real quick. boop, copy, paste, small, and small needs to be boop, 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 74. And these, of course, are random. I just thought they were pleasing, a pleasing placement, initial placement for my clouds. So you could, of course, say, I'm going to do this, put position absolute inside of each one of these three. Let's make this bigger. But by calling out all of the images at once and saying position absolute, I only have to put it in one place. So that's a way of cleaning up your CSS. If you ever notice that you're saying something over and over again, there might be a different way to call out those items and give them all that same thing, so you don't have to duplicate it. But yes, so now we have our beautiful clouds, and we could bring back our other content, uncomment it, and it's beautiful and it's popping and it's gorgeous. But one last thing that I want to do, since we've learned about animations, is I want to leave you with a cloud animation, which is actually super, super simple. So let's go down here below our clouds, and we're going to say at keyframes, and I'm going to name this one move left. And as you can imagine, we're going to have a from and a to, whoops. And inside our from, remember, our from is our starting place. Where do we want it to start? So I'm going to say transform, and instead of scale, I'm going to say translate. Translate is just to move. And I'm going to translate it along the x-axis. You can also do y or both, but I'm going to say translate x, and I'm going to say 300%. And then I'm going to give it a 2 of the same thing. Oh, sorry, too many semicolons. It's yelling at me. So the same thing, but this one's going to say negative 300%. So on my x-axis, I want you to start 300%. So that's basically off the page. And then I want you to move to negative 300%. That's on the left side of the page. I want you to move left. So let's go ahead and give all three of our clouds, or AKA the images in our sky, transform this move left keyframe. So I'm going to say, let's go to our sky, and I'm going to say animation move left. We'll do the exact same. We'll say 1 second, and I'll just say ease for the funsies of it. Excuse me. So if you'll notice, the whopping fun that was, I'll refresh my page. The clouds move left, and then they go back to their original position, and then they're still. This is because we gave, if you keep scrolling, the images in our sky this move left, 1 second, ease, but I'm not telling it to keep going, right? So let's say instead of, we can leave the ease and say infinite. So now it'll keep going forever. I think the 1 second though is it's a bit quick. It's a little bit much. So let's go ahead and say probably 60 seconds. We want this to be a leisurely stroll across the sky. And then we also want it to alternate, if you'll remember. So let's go back to, we'll change it to 6 seconds. So instead of going here and then popping back into its original place, as it does there, we want it to alternate, and go back and forth. So once it reaches the end, I want it to go ahead and go back the way it came before resetting the animation. But 6 seconds is still too fast. I think I'm going to leave it at 60 seconds. And that way it's like a super slow, subtle thing, the clouds moving across the sky. So yeah, this is my webpage. I think it's ready to ship, and I really, really hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you dig more into what's possible with HTML and CSS, please tweet at me. I would love to see your creations at Alyssa Nicoll on Twitter. And I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much.